The journey begins at the narrow gate. The journey, Jesus beckons me to roam. The journey, where the path is straight. The journey takes me home. The journey takes me home.
Welcome to The Journey. Glad you could join us this morning or whatever time of day it might be, but thanks for taking the time and joining us for the journey. If you've been watching all of our episodes so far, this is our 9th one. And as I've reviewed them and gone over them, it's interesting to me to see to hear everybody's journey and how there's so many similarities to our journey. And there's many differences to our journey. Each one has some similarities, each one has some differences, but every journey has a point in which Jesus has really meant something. Whether we've met Jesus early on in life or later in life, there is a point when Jesus takes over our life and we submit to him and he begins that process of redemption. And so I hope that you've been enjoying those journeys. And this morning, the person I have with me is no different. His journey with Christ began early. And at a certain point in life, his journey with Christ began in earnest. So I want to welcome this morning in the studio with me, Marshall Murray. So welcome here, Marshall.
Thank you, Pastor. Good to be here.
Glad you're here. I enjoyed our visit when we visited and talked about your journey, and I'm looking forward to others being able to hear how Christ has entered in. So start us off with your journey. How did it all begin?
My faith journey is one of long term. My grandfather was actually a pastor. And he rode on muleback. I think he started on Thursday and came home Sunday night. Wow. And he would actually just go to multiple churches, and he was paid in chickens and whatever they happened to have on the farm. And so he was a circuit preacher, is what they used to call him.
Wow, yeah.
So that's what I grew up in, the Southern Baptist faith, and that was what started. I was raised that we read the Bible at dinner tables. We had to eat dinner together. That was one of the things you had to do. And everybody talked about their day and what they were going to do. And it was also a way for our parents to guide us. You know, they could kind of move us this way and move us that way.
Yeah.
And so we, up until I was, all the way through high school, I was in multiple things in the church every week for youth and this and that and the other. So, but that all came from my grandfather, who was the kind of the patriarch of the whole thing and doing all that. So.
Right. And so you some of your early years started in North Carolina, is that right?
Yeah, that's where I was born.
Okay. Yeah. And then
that was pretty early.
Pretty early, yeah. Right. And then you moved to Port Orchard.
Yeah.
You had told me that. Tell me a little bit more about when you received Christ. You were 12 years old.
I was 12 years old, and every summer we went to it was called Glorieta Baptist Bible Camp in New Mexico. And we would go there every year, and it was a trek because it was the old station wagon, and you had to have the canvas water bags and all that stuff because it overheated everything. So you'd have to stop near a creek or something, pour water in the car, and head on down. But we went there every year, and I accepted Christ. There was a call, and I accepted Christ at 12 in a bleacher with about 300 other people who came to Christ that day.
Wow.
So it was just, and it was one of the most overwhelmingly warm, wonderful things. So it wasn't just, I accept Christ. It took me over. So
that's pretty cool. that obviously for your family to go that far and go through that filling up with water all the time, I mean, that was an important thing for your family, as you said. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. So you graduate high school in 1968, I think. Is that right?
Yep.
So what happened after that?
Well, right after 68, I think it's like everybody, you seem to want to run with the devil for a while. I don't know why, but I did. And so I had a bunch of friends said, let's go to Haight-Ashbury. And that was, and all the hippies were there. And I got down there, stayed about 2 months, but I didn't enjoy it. It was just, the hippies were just ripping off people like the businessmen did, So it was a very different, and it was all, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and all that. And the one thing I really remember is I was in Sausalito, and I had long hair, and they wouldn't let me use their bathroom because I had long hair.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So I came home. I had a job offer from my uncle in South Carolina because I couldn't get a job up here. And so I went down to South Carolina in, it was probably about November of 68.
Okay.
And then I went down there and spent a year before I was asked to come into the Army.
Mm-hmm. Which was kind of a major event in your life.
Yeah.
So early 69, right?
Right.
You're drafted, or?
Yeah, what happened is, it's a strange story, and I tell it, people don't believe it, but I had a recruiter call me on a Friday afternoon. He said, you're going in the Army on Monday morning. And I was like, what? And it was right at the beginning of summertime, and I wanted to play. And he said, but if you find a friend to come with you, we'll do a 30-day or 90-day delayed enlistment. And I thought, I'm going Monday morning because none of my friends are going to do that. And an hour later, a buddy comes in. I said, I've got to go in the Army Monday because unless I find somebody to go with me. And then we can wait through the summer. And he goes, I'll go. And he called the guy up and enlisted, and we waited until the end of summer, and off we went. And we walked into, I think it was Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We walked into a barracks, and he went to the left, and I went to the right. And I didn't see him for about another year and a half, I guess, on a flight line in Vietnam.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there you are in Vietnam, fall of 69. And you were in for 2.5 years, is that right?
Yeah, total. And I was in combat almost 2.
Oh, wow.
So it sounds silly now that I think about it, but I had my 20th and 21st birthday in a bunker in Vietnam.
Wow.
And I remember not wanting to go home, quite honestly. I just, there's just something very attractive about living on the edge. So
that's adrenaline rush kind of thing. Yeah.
Adrenaline, I tell people, is the best drug in the world because it's instantaneous and then it can go away instantly. So you're always trying to keep it going. And even when you come back, that's part of the problem with vets now and vets in my day. They want to keep that adrenaline going. And so a lot of them turn to drugs, things like that.
So that's an interesting, here you are, you've received Christ at 12, church is important, God is important in your family's life. Where did you find God in Vietnam, or did you?
I didn't. There was nothing that I saw that was godly there. And it was, it's such a strange, otherworldly kind of thing when you're going through combat that it's, all the norms are gone, completely, absolutely gone. And so your new norms don't go to the good side. They go to the bad side. And they go a lot quicker than you would think. It doesn't take long. So
you get out of the Army, you're looking for jobs, nothing available around here.
No, I went into an unemployment office, and there was a Vietnamese guy there. And he told me I couldn't have a job. And I asked him why he had a job. Since I'd just come from his country, I was kind of trying to figure that out. But that didn't go well. I wasn't real happy about that. So my uncle called from South Carolina and said, "Oh, you can come back. Now you can make $1.50 an hour or something." Yeah, $1.50 an hour. Wow. So I did. I went back to South Carolina and for the second time. And my family's from the South, so it was a part of my history I had really no knowledge of outside of hearing stories. But
Sure.
But I wanted to know what the South was really about, not the stuff you just hear, which is usually not so good.
Yeah.
And people have an image of Southerners. I don't know why, but they will fool you. They're a lot smarter than you think, and they pay attention.
Sure.
So I went to work for him and stayed about another year. I think maybe a year and a half, it might have been.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided I wanted to go back home. So I did and tried to find a job and couldn't find one. So I enrolled in a film school and a technical school. It's called an FCC First Class License. So it's an engineering license. And I went through both of those and also broadcasting. And I really loved school because all we did is play, the instructors were great. But it was just, I was just partying and going to school. So.
Right. Well, I want to take you back just a little bit because, during the time you're in South Carolina, that's the one.
Yeah.
That would change your story, wouldn't it?
That would.
Yeah. I've just created a new journey for myself. You're living in South Carolina. Church is important for your family. You go every now and then, but you made the comment of, well, I don't. Why is God doing all this? What's the deal?
And again, that comes back to after Vietnam. There's not you have taken all the godly things out of your life, and you've basically thrown them away. It's not like you've just set them aside. You've thrown them away. And in South Carolina, the reason I went to church is that's where the girls were. And everybody went to church. And you went 3 times a week. And so Marshall, would go to this little church. And it was one of those churches that was white with a steeple. It had everything just so typical of Southern church. Right. But there wasn't any Spirit of God there. And that's what I was going to tell you about my grandfather. He was a great man and he preached for over 57 years. But I never felt the warmth of God. I felt the wrath of God. And I call it the thumb. Ever since I was young, I remember thinking, oh, here comes the thumb. Here comes the thumb. Oh, yeah. Here comes the thumb. Yeah.
So church was not, and God was not a good, warm image for you.
No, and I had read Scripture and I had memorized Scripture. And so I knew it existed, but I think I didn't see it around me. Right. In my family, I did, but not anywhere else.
Right. So like many churches just become a place to benefit you in other ways, to meet people, meet women, whatever. And,
business.
And you weren't going there because you wanted to know Jesus. Right. Yeah. So you're in film school, you finish that, then you moved to Albuquerque, right?
Yeah. And that was because one of my friends got a job in a local station. And so he said, why don't you come down to work? And I was like, well, I can't get a job up here. I'll do that. And so I drove down there with everything and a new wife. And we went to New Mexico and stayed a few years. But I did a broadcasting and I did ABC News for a little while, but I think I told you this, that I'd watch the film, because back in those days it was all film. I'd watch the film that came in and I'd see the story as it was told. And then the reporter would come in and say, no, chop this out, chop that out, chop that. And so by the time you got to the end of that, it was a whole different story. And you look around today and you can see, I saw them in the mid-70s exactly how that happened. So they just make it be whatever, and it's done by the management of the station. It's whatever their political beliefs are. That's what gets put forward.
So just to give us a time frame, you're this is 1975 or so. You're somewhere around 24 years old.
Yeah, close to
something like
that.
that. And at this stage of life, you've really given up on church.
Yeah, I've definitely given up on church.
Yeah. And you made an interesting comment. You said you've given up on church, but you still knew God.
Yeah, and I think that's people that walk away from God or try to. I had a foundation in faith, and that foundation stays with you. So you can go be as nutty as you want to be, but that's still there. And, God is in the heart of every man. And I knew that. But I'll let you have this much, and then I'll let you have that much, but I'm keeping this part.
Right.
So
right.
that's what I was like. I call it a 2-hour Sunday Christian.
Right.
So
right. You had an interesting thing happen to you when you were there in the film business. You spent 10 days with someone famous.
Oh yeah. I had a reporter that made a beautiful wooden sign for Muhammad Ali, and the reporter didn't know him, and he sent it to him. And Muhammad Ali called him up and said, "Why don't you guys come on down for 10 days?" And so he was a Hispanic guy. He came to me and he said, "Hey, you want to do film and stuff for it?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." So we spent 10 days with Muhammad Ali, and there were a lot of upfront rules. One is he was Muslim, and he was faithful to that. He wasn't. It wasn't a label. He was faithful, but he wanted us to know that if we came down, there's certain things that they did that may not fit in with what was going on, and but we had to abide by them. And the way they worked is they woke up when the sun came up, and they went to bed when the sun went down. And it was very male dominated, to say the least. But I enjoyed it because I got to meet a man that was a hero, actually, world champion boxer, and he was very bright. He could make you laugh in a half second, but he thought deeply, and that's the thing that I really, you have a persona that you don't know anything about, and then you go meet him, and it's like, no, there's way more to this guy, way more. So.
And there were some things that happened in that, or one thing that happened in those 10 days, because you said they always took time for prayer.
Yeah, so the Muslim faith, they multiple times a day they do prayers, and so we were not going to join that. We had been invited to, and I couldn't do it in my spirit, and so the Hispanic guy reporter I was with was Catholic, and I said, "So why don't we pray when they pray?" Or he said it to me, I don't remember who. And so we prayed when they prayed. We went somewhere separate and we prayed. And that was a powerful thing. I didn't know it at the time, but it ended up being a very powerful thing. So
yeah, you had mentioned it was kind of like it was a flickering of flame of Christ again. Yeah. So you, 79 or so, you come back to Washington because you're promised a job. Doesn't work out.
Right. So I live in a cabin, I guess, that was, the air went through it in the winter so hard, there weren't really windows on it. And our bed was next to a kerosene heater. And I remember trying to hug that heater because I was freezing the whole time.
Wow.
And my friends lived within a mile, and I didn't see my friends for over a year. I went into a deep depression, and the job that I was promised was a real good, big job. And then I got up here, and they, that didn't happen. So I became very depressed for a little over a year, and so that was a hard time in my life.
Yeah. And I think through this time, if I understood correctly, you're kind of sporadically going to church now and then?
Yeah.
You're starting
just very sporadically. It started after the year, I decided I needed to do something. But, when you're in depression, you think you're doing it right there, and you just go deeper and deeper into depression. So I enrolled in a college, And when I went into college, then, of course, I had been a C- student all my life. And when I went to college and I was paying for it, I was a 4.0 student. And so that, for some reason, that kind of started sparking. There were some Youth for Christ and some of the things on campus. So I would hear it, and I'd go sit down with them, eating lunch, and do a half hour. And so it was starting to come back, but it was feeling more. I was internalizing it more. I wasn't just hearing and let it wash over me. I mean, it was getting stuck in there.
So God's starting to show up again in different ways and stir your soul, really, your spirit. You, I hope I'm not walking you through too much here.
No, go.
Okay. You started a job at Boeing in '79.
Yeah.
And tell me that story. That was a fabulous story about what happened there in Boeing.
I joined Boeing, and one of my lifetime friends and I, somehow we both got there at the same time, and we worked for about, it was great. We were in engineering, and we worked for about, I'm going to say, a year and a half, maybe 2 years max. And we walked in one day, and they said, "You don't have a job, so we'll see you later." And I had kind of counted on that for my income. And it was a good company. I mean, they had benefits, they had insurance, they had, they were paying good wages. I mean, when I got that job, I think I was just the starting wage was 3 times higher than what my last job had been.
Wow.
So it was a good job.
Yeah. And then now you're laid off again, and you're going, oh man, back to poverty.
Yep. But then I decided to start a business, and I did basically financial things. And I told you the other day, and this is true, that I ate peanut butter and jelly for 3 years because it's sales, and you got to struggle. And so what I finally did is started knocking on 100 doors a day.
Wow.
And out of that 100 doors a day, about 20 people would answer, and I would have one appointment for that night.
Wow.
So, and then that started turning into money because it's you're filling the hopper. You don't know who's going to say yes or no. You just know you're talking to somebody, and that was it.
Yeah.
So,
well, if we ever go on a trip together, I won't bring peanut butter.
That's good.
Yeah, you can have the bologna sandwich.
That's good.
About 91, you end that company. You're back at Boeing.
Yeah, I got rid of the company, and I went back to Boeing. And one of my friends, the same guy that actually long friend is, said, "Hey, come on back." And I went, okay. So I went back and worked there another probably 9 years, I think.
Okay.
So I worked on the 707, 767, 777, 707, 727. I worked on a lot of stuff, and it was all engineering stuff.
Right.
And it was in the factory too, so that's the part I really liked because engineers design things, and sometimes that doesn't translate well to what the guy on the floor is doing.
Sure.
So
sure.
I was the translator.
So at this point, you're still kind of spiritually sporadic. God's getting a little bit more important in now and then, but you're still in control. You're still saying, "Well, I got this." Yeah.
And it's and that was a long time of walking away. I mean, I had a marriage I was not wanting to stay in, and I stayed another 15 years. And so when that finally ended, I was done with church, really. I mean, I was pretty much done, but I knew that I couldn't be done with it. I mean, I might have been done with church, but I wasn't done with God, and God wasn't done with me. Really, is a better way to say that.
Yeah. So, you were divorced in 97, I think you said. 96, 97.
96, I think it was, yeah.
96, yeah. Okay. And you're still at Boeing.
Yep.
And then you met someone.
Yeah, within a couple of years, had been working with someone, and then I didn't work with them, and I worked with them again, and it was Jane who I married.
Mm-hmm.
So, and she had just gone through a divorce, so it just kind of worked out. But one of the things that we said though when we first met, and I told you this the other day, and it's, what is your faith? I mean, one of the things that my Southern Baptist dad said is, don't ever marry a Catholic. And guess what Jane was? She was a Catholic. So that had always set in me, but I didn't really take it to heart, because I think God is God, and religion messes it up. So
sure.
But we did at the very beginning of our dating. We talked about our faith and what we believed, and how strongly we believed it, or how not strongly we believed it, and was that something that should be considered before we got married, really. And so we did. We talked about it quite a bit.
Wow. So you're 49, you're talking again about faith and getting serious about it.
Yeah. And we started going to little churches. When we got married, we actually got married twice. Once on a boat out in the Sound, with our whole families on the boat. But wasn't going to have just a boat captain marry us. So we had been going to a small Baptist church in South Hill, in Puyallup. And we went there, and the pastor and an elderly couple stood up for us, and we were married then. So that was our first time. Then the next time was on the boat, and then after that was a big party. So.
And it was through the contact of the pastor who married you in Puyallup that you began going to that church more regularly.
Yeah. And there was more there, and you could feel the Spirit more there. But again, you could kind of see the hypocrisy in the aisles, and I had enough of that. I'd been done all that. And so I was looking for a church that really wanted to preach the Word of God right out of the Bible. That's what I wanted. Yeah. And I wanted it in context.
Right.
So.
Right. But it's becoming, at least, it's something you're now searching for. It's becoming part of your life. Right. It's not something you're pushing away. It's something you're saying, okay, God. I'm ready to hear you and not somebody else, but here,
And just, I want to back up a little bit. Yeah. I almost married a woman from Taiwan, and I had looked into Eastern religions. I had looked into Buddha and all of that stuff. And none of it took hold at all. And I did it because I think I was trying to prove God.
Gotcha.
I don't know how to say that exactly, but that's what happened. The more I looked into these other religions, the more I went back to my foundational faith and found that to be way more secure.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, how important has that foundation been?
Yeah, it's been very, very, very. So thank you, Granddad.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. We're getting more recent in your life. You in around 2000 or so, year 2000, moved to Mason Lake.
Yeah, Jane and I had weirdly become very wealthy, and we decided to move to Mason Lake. And a mutual friend of ours was there, and we bought a house there. We had one in Puyallup, and we moved out there. And it was at that time that Judy Lickle came to us through a mutual friend and said, there's this little church starting out at this tent in Union, and you might want to go check it out. And that's all they said. And Jane and I had been to several churches in the area, and we said, you know what, let's go do that. And it was Easter, I believe. I'm not quite sure, but I believe it was. And it was blustery, and they had a campfire going, and things were flying all over the place, and everybody was wrapped in coats, and it was right on the waterfront. Right on the waterfront. And I don't know, it just, and the thing that really got me, I was tired of churches with pretense, and you have to be this, and you have to sit this way, and you stand up, sit down, and all that stuff. And so what I did is the pastor at the time took his coffee cup, and there was a little altar with a cross, but he just put his plastic coffee cup right on the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at Jane and I said, "This is our church."
Right.
That's it.
Right. Because there wasn't any pretense or
None.
Yeah.
No. And I knew that if he did that he hopefully was humbled enough to, be bringing the gospel out and not just pretense and what do you want? And, if you make money, you sit in this row. If you have money, you do that. If you don't have money, you sit in the back and nobody talks to you. And all that.
Right. So you're now part of NCCU.
Yeah, actually the first 16 people, we came out and we joined immediately. And then we actually went and lived back in Puyallup. Kind of a strange thing happened. We joined the church, we come out here, everything's going pretty well. And within 3 years, we lost almost every penny we had in the millions of dollars. We also lost, my health just went bad. So I lost all my health. And so we had to move back and have jobs. So we went back and reacquired jobs and did that. But this church, we just kept coming out every Sunday. So for probably a year and a half, maybe more, we came out every single Sunday because it meant that much to us.
Well, you had said, and I was going to say that's a change in your life, and you had mentioned that's a changing point. All of a sudden now God means something.
Yeah. And my wife was raised Catholic, and they had a Bible, but it only came out when the priest came out. Right. And otherwise you couldn't find the thing.
Right.
And so, where was I going with that? The Bible study, I had done it in my youth, but Jane had never done any of it at all. And she said, "Let's do a Bible study. I want to see what this is about." And that's exactly what we did. We went to a Bible study, and Jane, bright, just started asking questions and stumped the pastor a few times. But he did go find out the answers. Yeah. And so Jane, boy, once she got a hold of that, she said, "This is real. This is gospel. This is real." And that, I was with her, it was real for me already. So
yeah.
That was a big change. That was one of those wonderful moments in life.
Yeah. And so now Christ is important. He means something again.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to ask you to look back over your life a little bit, and maybe you've said it already, maybe you haven't, but as you look back in your journey with Christ, are there things that come to the forefront that you want us to know, or you would give advice to somebody, or?
Well, a lot, having the foundation of faith is the thing that everybody needs. And it seems like it's harder to get nowadays than when I was growing up. But it is there. I mean, if you want to seek it out. And through all of my stupid and turmoil and all the crazy things I did and the really non-godly things I did, God was always with me. I think there's a picture where it shows a sandy beach and a set of footprints, and it's something about, God wasn't with me. And then, the quote is, "No, those are his footprints. He's holding you up." That's a very real thing to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that God is always with you, no matter where you go, and he won't stop loving you, and he won't stop pursuing you, thankfully.
Yeah.
But at some point you have to say, "Lord, I'm yours." And that's everything. That's your money, that's your time, that's everything. And once you get to that, then it changes your life. The worries that you once had go away. I don't have a lot of worries anymore about anything. Yeah. And I've been, three deathbeds, I guess you'd say. So there's nothing that worries me. And I know that God has been with me through all of that. And I'm happy about that. I'm very happy about that.
You had made the comment that before you had danced around faith.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you gave up control, is what you said.
Yeah.
gave up control to God. No more dancing around it, pretending sort of thing.
Control is something that we seem to really crave in our life. And for me, the one thing I want is less control. I notice that the more I give it up to God, whether it's money or time or whatever, the more you give up, the more you get blessed by it. Mm. And it blesses others. I mean, that's something that really is, I love blessing other people. That's one of my things that my wife and I have decided to do in our faith. And so we, that's why we partnered with the church in the beginning too. So same thing.
Yeah. One more quote from you.
Okay.
You had said, it's not to God, it's not where are you in, wait a minute, let me say this. It's not where is God in my plan,
right?
It's where am I in his
God's plan.
Yeah.
That's the day when you understand that. That's the day where everything changes.
Yeah, I really like that. I better say it again because I messed it up the first time so bad. But it's not where is God in my plan, but where am I in God's plan? And that really, probably for me, kind of sums up your journey. And I didn't want to start with that. I wanted to end with that.
Thank you.
So thank you. Anything else before we...
No, the only thing I want to say is that my faith was kind of sideways, even with the last pastor and stuff. And my faith has really grown with your teaching, Pastor. I mean, your teaching has just changed my spiritual life from kind of a laziness to an advocacy. I mean, I want to know more every day. I want to read more scripture. I mean, I really want to know more. And that was because of you.
Oh,
so
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I love the way God works.
Me too.
Yeah. So your journey with Christ, has it been worth it?
It's been way worth it.
Yeah.
Way worth it. Like I say, I've lost all my wealth, all my health, and I'm still here. I've actually outlived some of my doctors. So,
wow.
I'm still here, and but it's just wonderful. It's wonderful to wake up every morning and just enjoy every day.
Yeah.
So, it's good.
Good. Thank you for joining me on the journey today. Thanks for sharing your journey with all the folks out there. And not only local people, but people from all over the world watch the journey. So thank you for joining us, for taking time to hear about God's work in Marshall's life through his journey. Maybe God has got you somewhere on that journey and it sounds similar to what you've just heard. We want to help you. We want to help you to know who God is. We want to bring you to the point where it's not about where is God in your plan, but where are you in his plan? So if we can do that in any way, please get hold of us, email, call the church office. We'd be more than glad to chat with you and pray with you and help you along in your journey. So thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the day, and may God richly bless you as you serve him.
The journey begins at the narrow gate. The journey, Jesus beckons me to roam. The journey, where the path is straight. The journey that takes me home. The journey takes me home.